Hello, viewers. Welcome to episode 2 of Beyond the Listing. Today, I'm sitting with Prash from the Real Estate Times, and he's one of the reputed sales agent in WA. And one thing which people don't know about him in the real estate world is he's an auctioneer, and there are very, very few people who can beat him in the auctions. He represents WA in multiple auctions or competitions across the country. And welcome, Prash. Let's talk about you.
Raj, thank you for having me here. Firstly, I really do appreciate the time that you're giving us, and hello to all of our viewers. I believe there's going to be a lot of insights that you're going to get in this episode. A little bit more about me. Thanks. I think you've done the intro there really well, my friend. That looks rehearsed, and you told me this was spontaneous. So,
look, I mean, the good thing about people like you is, Prash, for example, we have been working together for years now.
Yes,
and we know you beyond the business side of things as well. A good human, and there was always that humor working with you, and being with you either on a social event or whatever it is. And I thought this episode could actually give the opportunity for the viewers to be able to understand and know a bit more about what happens from not just from the buyers or sellers side, but the auctioneer who is actually doing the auction.
Sure.
And what are the things which you go through, and how that insight might be able to help the viewers as in understanding how they might want to be prepared for a good auction and what kind of things to do.
Absolutely.
And I think there's nothing better than hearing from you. I mean, obviously we learned a fair bit cross pollination kind of thing with the knowledge what we have had in the industry, and a lot of the talks between you and I picked it up when I'm buying properties for myself or my clients in auctions. And it'll be good to put them out there so people can actually understand what we are doing as well.
More than happy to do so, Raj. And I think it's really important what's lacking right now. My personal belief, especially in the WA market, it's all about the education for buyers and sellers.
Yep.
In regards to buying in auction and also selling via auction. So that's one of our missions. I believe as part of the Riva Auction Committee as well. We truly want to push more education forward to the marketplace. As you are aware, Raj, auctions don't happen as much in WA as they do in the eastern states. And we do see that apparent, especially when we are conducting auctions and buyers come through the conversations that we have. In answer to your question with regards to what happens during the auction process here in WA. So what we find is that generally it all starts from the advertising. I think the idea of auction is that it needs to be transparent. In our market for the last 3 years, what's been lacking from the buyer's point of view, what we hear from our buyers is that they don't have open communications from most of the agents that they work with or they go to buy from. And they end up losing the properties that they like and made an offer on because of what we call a closed door negotiation. Generally, negotiations happen if there are multiple offers. Negotiations happen behind closed doors. And what happens in those situations is buyer number 2, buyer number 3 don't hear back from their agents, and they miss out perhaps on $1,000 or $500 in some cases.
Which is not very substantial when you're buying a property as such, but the decision of not hearing from the sellers or the selling agents could potentially mean someone missing out on their dream house or whatever it is. Right?
Very true. And hence why the auctions are a transparent method for purchasers to buy their properties. What happens general cases is that buyers are afraid when they see the word auction. There are many myths around the auction process. I'll take you through 3 of the main myths.
Sure, absolutely.
Number 1 would be that you need to be a cash buyer to purchase at an auction. And the short answer is you don't need to be a cash buyer. All you need to do is to have your ducks in line. As long as you've got a pre-approval, you have got a good relationship with your broker has done everything he needs to do up until the point of auction day to prepare yourself for your limit. And let's give a case study example. If the property's limit or your limit on purchasing the property is $1 million, and you've got a pre-approval for that $1 million, buying unconditionally is a possibility. So I think that's something all buyers should be aware of.
Yep.
You have the pre-approval. You can go and bid at auction. You sign off on an unconditional because you haven't crossed your limit.
Yep.
In most cases, your broker will get you your finance approval within 7 to 14 days.
Yep.
So that's myth number one.
Yep. Just on that,
Sure.
so I wanted to highlight that thing, because a lot of people, the first thing what they think is auction is it's risky.
That's right.
Yes, it is risky if you haven't done your research and understand what you want to buy and why you want to buy this thing. So I keep talking about clarity, strategy, and then having the patience to get to that.
Yes.
So once you have a clarity around what you want to buy and why you want to buy and what is your end goal with this property, or how is it adding value to your property portfolio, once you have that clarity, it's about having a strategy around how do I approach a auction, how am I prepared for it. Like, for example, when I want to give you an example of what we have done for my own purchase. I bought 3 properties of mine in auctions before, and the first time when I did an auction, obviously I was quite well prepared, so I prepared for it until the deadline. I knew I want to buy this property. It's in a suburb called Rivervale, which is very close to the city, and so almost 800-900 square meters of land, older rock solid house, and we absolutely fell in love with the location. Obviously there's a bit of emotion in that sense, which we'll talk about as we go, but that was our first investment property, right?
Wonderful.
And so what we have done for that is we did all the due diligence. We had a clear picture of what we want to do with this and how we are going to hold on to this property as well. But as you said, we had a confirmation from our buyer, from our broker. So our broker said, you know what, anything under a certain budget, it's yours, I'll get you the loan. That's not a problem.
Beautiful.
So yes, the risk is you can't pull back after you win in an auction.
Yes, right.
Because the deposits, what you put is potentially using the deposit. I think at that time the deposit was like 25% deposit at before the end of the day, which was nearly $65,000-$70,000 I think, which we put in. And the other thing which we have done is we can't do building and pest subject to clauses in most of those auctions, right? So we have done our checks. So we took our building and pest inspector for the normal inspection which was there, and we took the permission of the sales agent to say, look, can we have our building and pest inspector look into the roof and do all these checks as well. Yes, we had to pay for it, but it's well worth paying that $500-$600 upfront than losing the money after you buy the property. So we have done that due diligence as well. And once we got to that, one thing which I clearly remember is they gave us an option to say, do you want 30 days to settle, 45 days to settle, 60 days to settle?
Flexibility.
So I took that 60 days out, So
Excellent.
In case if I can get it early, I can get it early. But, I want to make sure I have that enough time to be able to get my finances, because if I don't get it, we might not get an extension on that. That's something which the buyers have to be aware of, that, you can choose in most cases, how much time you want to be settling on the property, even in an auction.
Yes.
Because a lot of people think like that's it, you have 2 weeks to settle, and if you don't do, you lose the money. Yes, it might be in some cases, in some states they can do that, but in most cases, so having an extension for 2 weeks at the straight up front is actually a good idea. Be very open with the auctioneer, tell them where you are with finances and what you want to do. I think that can help a long way.
Very well said. Touching on your second point regarding due diligence. So we spoke about the first, which was getting your finance in order, which you did in your personal case. On second note, it actually ties in well to myth number 2. Second note is that because you're buying unconditionally, you don't know what you're buying. That's the myth that buyers have about auctions in WA. But as you've rightfully said, you have the time. General campaign, auction campaigns are normally between 14 to 28 days. We do a 3-week campaign, 21-day campaign with auction on day 22. So if you've seen the property at the very start, you have that 20 days to organize your building and pest inspection. What we do for our sellers is that we recommend our sellers to get a building and pest inspection done. I'm a firm believer of doing that. I don't come from a building background, so having a building report also helps me sell the property. Number one, in a general sale, sellers are aware of what major items they may need to rectify based on Annexure A clause, building and pest inspection, major items. Number two, in an auction, a buyer is now well aware of what they would be purchasing, what value they can put on a property based on a building report. It's third party. They can contact the building inspector for any questions they may have. In addition to that, we also use a company called Before You Buy. And they're a fantastic company to work with because in most cases, our advertisements come with the option of Before You Buy. And you can order a pest inspection through the site. So when you're scrolling down on our auction advertisement on REA or on Domain, you will see the option of ordering
Sure.
a building and pest. If the sellers have already done a building and pest inspection report,
Yep.
it will only cost you $59 to do it.
Yep.
$60 for you to order a report, and you get it at the end of the campaign. You pay the additional fees.
Yep.
Sellers get reimbursed the building and pest.
Okay.
So we cover the due diligence for you because, again,
Yep.
our role is to provide clarity. As the agents, what our duty for our buyers is to ensure that there's open communication and clarity. If you don't know what you're buying, what's the point?
Sure, absolutely. And interesting you say that, so with all the due diligence and everything which you are providing it upfront, where people can actually read through that and talk to you through the campaign if they want to
Yes.
understand something, which is very similar to any sales process, so if you're doing it as a private sale as well,
Yes.
you might still do the same thing, you're still available for them when they ask the questions and
Absolutely.
so on. But I really like the fact that, auctions, if done right, from the buyer's point of view, if they prepare right, it can be a very transparent way of knowing where is every one of them and what, they're all in the same leveling field, if it makes sense.
Yes.
Because everyone is buying at the same terms and conditions. The only difference it could be is how many days before you settle. Other than that, everything is the same.
Well said.
So so the buyers can be very well prepared, so it's like, so it's all about having that clarity, strategy and patience to find the right property, and then how you strike on the day of the auction.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
So
you
now-
hit the nail on the head. Myth number 3
Yes.
actually falls in line with the flexibility item, because, for example, if a buyer is subject to sale, they believe that they are not in a position to come and bid at auction,
Yep.
when it is the opposite.
Yep.
Because you do know, especially if you have your home ready, this is best case scenario.
Yes.
If your home is ready to go to market, which if you're purchasing subject to sale,
Yep.
you're already in that thought process, you can ask the agent for flexibility on settlement.
Sure.
So you get ready for auction day.
Yep.
On day 22, you bid at auction, you're successful at auction. On day 23, you have your agent in place and
Yep.
you're already ready to go to market. If you've got 60 days to settle from there,
Yep.
our generic sale, let's say you opt to go via auction,
Yep.
perfect, you've got 30 days.
Yep.
If you go via a private sale, you now have 42 days to meet your 60-day settlement.
Yes, absolutely.
So that is, those 3 myths is what stops buyers, I believe, from attending auctions,
Yep.
seeing auction ads, inquiring on it, and also what inherently ultimately stops auctions from happening more in WA.
Yeah, like, so WA people have traditionally been not a big fan of auctions, if I can say.
Yes.
But in the last few years, how people have been migrating interstate and so on.
Yes.
Auctioning is becoming pretty open for it, So like, for example, if I'm working with Eastern States buyers for us, or while we are buying properties in the Eastern States, or while we're buying properties in Perth as well, a lot of buyers are actually comfortable in an auction space. WA people has still not come to that stage.
Yes.
But what do you think? I mean, what do you think might be the reason why WA doesn't have as many auctions as compared to Sydney and Melbourne, for example?
Sure. Sydney and Melbourne has a cooling off period when it comes to do with their general sales process. So if it is a private sale, a private treaty, sale method, then they do have a cooling off period. What that means is that when you sign off on an acceptance, for those of you out there who are unaware of Melbourne and Sydney, when you sign off on an offer and acceptance, you've got 7 to 10 days before you pay your deposit.
Yep.
That is a cooling off period, which means that if you pull out any time during that period, you can withdraw from the contract, no penalty. Our
Yeah.
offer and acceptance in WA, the
Doesn't
Riva
have it, yeah.
does not have that.
Yes,
It's we call it bulletproof, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, most agents are more comfortable with doing so.
Yeah.
Also, market changes. When the market shifted in 2009 to 2012, 2012 to 15, and then again we saw it in 2022 onwards, there was a big shift in buyer behavior. And what I mean by that is the idea of more supply versus demand, right? Which means buyers had choices.
Yep.
So they would then skip on an auction campaign because they've got another option
Yep.
just down the road. That then shifted agents' mindset.
Yep.
Sets. When they go in and speak to their sellers, they are now talking to their sellers about, we don't need to do an auction.
Yep.
We can do private treaty.
Yep.
One of the major pros of an auction as well is days on market.
Absolutely.
So when we had days on market where it was 45 to 60 days,
Yep.
I do not miss those days, Raj,
Yeah.
but might be coming again, we don't know. When we had those
Yep.
days on market, auction reduces that to 22 days.
Sure.
So that I believe was one of the reasons why auctions stop happening or is not as popular compared to the eastern states, and ultimately boils down to knowledge for our buyers and sellers.
Absolutely. So in short, what I would say is the cooling off period is a big driver for
Absolutely.
these auctions to be more prevalent in Sydney and Melbourne sort of spaces. But also the fact that the demand for properties is so high especially in Sydney, in some areas where it's like no matter what, even in the downtown there are some areas which are of high demand.
Yes.
And there is literally no supply in some of those areas.
That's
So
right.
when you're talking about high ticket items, people are still happy to buy the properties in an auction, and obviously from the selling point of view, a real estate agent, that's a great opportunity for them to close the deal on the day.
Yes.
So it's like yes, now the clearance rates are quite low. If you look into Sydney, I think they're only 37% or
That's
something,
right.
which is quite low, but it'll pick up, right? So it's always that cycle which is going through. And I won't be surprised if WA is moving towards more to the auction stages as we go along in the next few years to come.
Yes.
But it's all about that understanding of where the markets are heading to, right? So and how the people's sentiment around buying a property is shifting as well. That's a big difference in where it's going to be.
Indeed,
And I think,
Raj.
so that's where we're getting into. Just on that auction thing.
Sure.
Again, going back to my experience of buying my first investment property, we had a situation where my offer was the highest offer, and that's not even close to what the sellers were expecting at the time, right? So they called me in. They said, "Look, the sellers' expectations are this one. I think it's 60,000 more
This
than
was during the auction.
This was during the
Yes,
auction, yes. So
understood.
they called me in because,
Yes.
So
You're
what
below
I
reserve.
offered is well below the reserve, So they said, look, 60,000 is what they had in mind. If you're not paying that money, we will pass on the property, which means that, it'll go back to the normal home opens and, you can see what it is and so on. A lot of people seem to think that, okay, you have to meet the reserve to be able to get to that. What I had was a complete different experience. So I was able to negotiate while I was inside. Everyone standing outside. Being the highest bidder, we went in. So they said, look, you're 60,000 away. And I sort of said, look, I need a couple of minutes to think about. And they are on the loudspeaker with the seller.
Yes.
I pretty much went in and said, look, I did my numbers again. I don't see my value at 60,000. If you want 60,000, I'm walking away right now. The max I'm going to give you is 10,000. And I want you to tell me in the next 5 minutes or else I'm going, because there is another property up the road and I want to go and inspect that property if this is not coming. And we were able to negotiate and we got that deal for 10,000 more than what my offer was.
Fantastic.
That was actually 40,000 under my limit, what I put in and said, this is where I want to be. So for the viewers out there who are thinking that, look, I have to meet the reserve, if not, I'm not getting the property. So what would you suggest as an auctioneer,
Sure.
how they can negotiate in terms of, look, you don't have to meet the reserve all the time. You
Yes.
might still be able to get it under, but how should they approach you?
Sure. So what we tell all of our buyers who come through our auction campaigns is very simple. You are welcome to place an offer at any time during the campaign. That's number one.
Yep.
It is up to the seller's discretion to sell prior to auction, during the auction, or post-auction.
Okay.
Sellers have all the rights to do that.
Sure.
The scenario you described is what we call a pass-in property.
Auction, yep.
Now, whenever we pass in or before we pass in the property, the auctioneer would go to the highest bidder because the highest bidder reserves the first right to negotiate. So what we tell our buyers is that if you don't want to make an offer prior, no problem. You would like to keep your cards close to your chest, you're more than welcome to do so. Here are the comparable properties. Sellers reserve, in most cases, are in line with feedback
Yep.
during the campaign, and also comparable properties.
Sure.
If we don't reach reserve, the auctioneer would say and announce clearly
Yep.
that we have not reached the reserve yet. The highest bidder at A, which is
Yep.
you, Raj, you get to negotiate first.
Yep.
So we tell our buyers, no matter what happens in
Yep.
the auction, be sure to be the last person to put your hand up.
Sure.
And whatever the increments that the auctioneer suggest, you're welcome to counter suggest, because it is an open negotiation.
Yep.
That's literally what it is. It is an open and transparent negotiation on the field.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, if you don't reach reserve, they don't announce that it's on the market yet, as long as you're the last hand to be up,
Yep.
the auctioneer will still take you aside and have that discussion. We had one very recently for a property in Bayswater. We were just shy of where the reserve was.
Yep.
We passed the property in with the highest bidder, wrote the offer
Yep.
on the auction contract and terms and conditions, presented it to the seller, negotiated it right after, and sold it within 24 hours.
Sure.
So, it was the idea of people having to meet the reserve to sell. Yes, buyers, again, they draw back because they don't know what the reserve is.
Yep.
Reserve prices are confidential.
Yep.
We get that question asked all the time. What is the reserve? What is the seller's reserve?
Yep.
The short answer is it's confidential because it is evolving.
Yes.
It all depends on what the market is willing to pay. And again, from the agent side, Raj, I'm sure you'll agree with this. Who are we to price properties?
Yep.
A property is worth what someone is willing to pay.
Absolutely. I mean, I say that all the time. When someone comes and says, like, what is it worth? I'm like, so it's worth what someone else is willing to pay.
Yes.
Where we draw a line is where we see the value, and that's where we stop it and say,
Well
this is where
said.
it is. If it doesn't fit in, we find something else and we go to something else.
Yes.
But just regarding the reserve price, though,
Sure.
so I have a question, and so this question has come up quite a few times.
Go for it.
Obviously, if I'm bidding for myself or for one of my buyers, we don't know what the reserve is.
Yes.
But doing a number of these checks and so on, we sort of understand where the reserve could be, so that's something which we are prepared with.
Good.
But because it's not shown to the public outside, as an example, say, you put 1 million as a reserve and, you're getting it there, and say it's at 150 or 1,050,000 or 1,070,000 or whatever. Do you change, or do you keep increasing the reserve depending on the competition, what's happening?
Excellent question. So the reserve is signed 48 hours prior to the auction.
So there is something signed up, and so does the buyers have the right to ask and say, show me where the reserve is at some point?
They do, however, it is up to the discretion of the sellers. So as the auctioneer, what we do is this. Let's say, for example, property is at $1 million, and we've reached 980. We go to the highest bidder and ask, are you willing to increase your offer? What's the best that you can go above this value? Buyers say, that is my ultimate. We go back to the sellers and ask them for the permission. Would you be happy for me to share with the buyers where you stand at the moment at a mill and see if we can raise them today? Go back to our buyers and say, in order to purchase the property, you need to be at a mill. 98% of the time, they raise their offer, right? So either they come up to the reserve or there is a further negotiation, exactly like what you did for your investment property.
Yes.
So the short answer is, again, that only happens with the highest bidder. We don't showcase our reserve to everyone on the crowd because that is the seller's discretion. They have the right to pull out at any time. We draw the property from auction at any time during the auction. We check with our sellers before we call it on the market. So with your question at the start about does it evolve, in other words, does it get raised as more bidding happens? We don't do that. We don't stop the bidding from happening. That's the honest answer. If there's more than 4 bidders and bidders continues past the reserve, as soon as I call first, second, third, if there's no more bidding, I check with the sellers. You happy to call in the market? We've already crossed it. I still check with them. They say yes. That's the only time I announce it.
So what you're telling me is, say if the seller has a has a reserve price at $1 million, and say it went to 1.1 million, more than what they wanted. So there is no confirmation that the buyer has secured the property until the seller actually says yes.
We're on the market. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, that's what we tell our clients. We don't make any decisions on the floor without checking with you. For those of you that have probably seen live auction conducted in videos on socials, you would see at any given point, the auctioneer, if different to the selling agent, will check with the selling agent. Are we okay now? Is it all right to call it on the market? Are we ready to go? The agent would be either walking back inside the house to check with the seller or on the phone with the sellers, in your case, and would confirm, yes, we're on the market and we sell away. So when I'm calling auctions for other agents in WA, that's what I tell them. I tell them, I want you to be the one that calls it on the market. You are the agent. You know the sellers. You tell me when you're ready. I point to you, or I look at you when bidding has stalled, and I confirm that. So again, it is by their discretion, Raj, that they can pull out at any time.
Okay. So this is good. This is good that we're getting this thing. But if I can put it this way, a lot of people, especially first home buyers,
Yes.
have got doubts on the whole auctioning process.
Sure.
And it's not uncommon. We have read about it, we heard about it, where there are a lot of fake buyers at the auctions.
Absolutely.
So how would you deal with that? I mean, obviously it's different from different companies, how
No
they
problem.
do that and so on. As a buyer, I had this question last week, when I was doing an event, and I gave them my answer as in how you don't worry about the fake bidders and so on. You go with your number, what is in there, and how you present yourself as a strong buyer, and that could put them off a lot of the times as well.
Yes.
But if you are auctioning, if you are in a buyer space, how would you not look at this noise of the fake auctions and
Sure.
so on, and how do you prepare yourself for that?
The first question I would ask the agent is, are you registering your bidders? Is registration required?
Yep.
Now in WA, there is no law that requires you to register your bidders.
Yep.
We do it as a best practice. And I think ethics come into play a lot. What you have mentioned is a phrase called dummy bidding. And that means that there are fake bidders there that are inflating the price during the auction. It's a very tricky process, because what happens if the highest bidder is the dummy
him.
bidder?
Yep.
That again raises...
It halts the whole process. Absolutely.
Exactly. So that will be something I tell the buyers. Have in your mind that it's a very rare case that an agent would do that. I believe, yes, there are unethical operators out there, no doubt about that. At the same time, majority of the people that are going through the auction process, they would want to run with the code and conduct of the Riva auction guide.
Sure.
We say that at the start of every auction.
Yep.
As an auctioneer, you need to be run past your code of conduct. We run past the code of conduct, and we're very firm about it.
Yep.
So there's no reason for us to do so besides, again, unethical operators.
We can't control everyone, and I understand the unethical practices, which which probably will be there in every industry.
Yes.
We just have to do the right thing for us.
The tips is to ask that.
Exactly.
Ask the agent, is registration required? How many registrations are there on the day? We say that openly.
It has to be
our
open,
buyers.
and also if a buyer is wanting to buy the property, I have always done this, and I strongly recommend the viewers to do that as well. If you are interested in the property, let the agent know that you are actually interested. There's nothing wrong in so there's nothing wrong in going and telling people, look, I am interested. You don't have to give a number straight away, but say that, look, I'm really in here to buy the property.
Yes.
And that makes you a strong candidate. And as an auctioneer, and obviously there are other agents who are helping the auctioneer to identify those people who are strong buyers, and they go and try to get the right number from them and so on. You just have to find that balance where what's your number and how do you get out of it at the right time. That's the questions which you get to ask.
In support of that, Raj, at all of our auctions, if I'm doing it for another agent, I do ask them. I sit with them for the reserve set meeting, so I meet the owners prior to the auction. I ask the agent, who are your bidders? Please introduce me to your bidders when I arrive. I'm at the auction. Generally, there's a home open prior to the auction.
Yes.
I'm at that home open.
Yeah.
And as soon as the bidders start coming and registering themselves, I introduce myself. The agent generally tells me who's the most interested party, who's the most likely candidate for the purchase. And you're right, I generally gravitate towards them during the auction. It's a prime thing to do. As long as you have your emotions in check and you've got strategy in play when it comes to the bidding, there's nothing wrong with that. For my own listings, exact same thing. I'm gravitating towards you during the auction because I know you're the most likely candidate to be bidding. So
Exactly. And there's an interesting thing which you mentioned about buying emotionally, right? This is where a lot of the buyers actually overpay for the properties because they are emotionally attached. And sometimes it's just that the panic moment, or people might say that, oh my god, I'm going to miss out on this property, so I might as well raise my hand twice or whatever it is. So because the bidding happens so quickly, imagine if you are standing in a crowd and someone raises their arm like a couple of seconds before you, that person might push the price by 50,000, and before you put your hand down, you might be looked as the next person as well. So one thing which I tell everyone at an auction, if they are going to do that, is unless you have a professional standing for you, they know exactly what they're doing. If not, just don't raise your paddle or hand up until you actually know what you're doing.
Yes.
And always make an eye contact with the auctioneer, so you are straight communicating with them to say, look, I am here and this is my next offer.
Yes.
So that's very, very important to do that. So if you're too shy, if you're unsure of what you're doing, make sure you have a professional. It could be a real estate agent, as a buyer's agent who can stand by you and help you do the auctions.
Yes.
Or just be prepared for what you're doing. So don't be hesitant, and that'll end up. Sometimes when the auction increments are 50,000 each, for example. Just holding your paddle up for 2 more extra seconds might mean that you have pushed the pricing by 100,000.
Yes.
And you might be priced out already straight away. If you do that, just be very
It's
careful
good
with
advice.
what you're doing.
Good advice. And again, as the auctioneer, we always check with the bidders.
Yep.
We don't just take your bid and call the 3 calls. We always say, all right, confirming your bid now at 1.1. Then if you both raised it at the same time, I'll check back at you and say, just confirming you standing in at 1.1 and 50. We've got 1.1 here already. I did take his bid first. Sir, ma'am, would you like to come back at 1.1 and 50? We often do that.
Sure,
we're always careful about that because we're not dealing in dollars here. We're dealing with millions or hundreds and thousands of dollars, someone's asset. So we take time with it. We're not cheap auctioneers.
Sure,
We always we take
Good to
our
know.
time with the calls, and we give them time to think. I often use that phrase in an auction. I say, sir, ma'am, it's just you and me here. I'm facilitating your purchase. Let me help you. Take your time. I'll do the 3 calls in respect to the other bidders. So even in my phrasing, this is exactly how I am on live auction day. Again, can't speak for every auctioneer, but that's what we do.
Absolutely. Now, look, it's a brilliant discussion, because now I had a doubt when you're talking about it, right?
Please.
So, for example, someone made a bid.
Yes.
You're saying, okay, like, are you sure? Yes, they say they're sure. Okay, first call, second call, and before the third call, they say, hang on, I want to put
Withdraw
back.
my bid.
So,
Yes.
are they allowed to do that?
Absolutely, yes. You can withdraw a bid. It's not recommended. Now, in most cases, the auctioneer has the right to sign off
Okay.
on behalf of the buyers. You're doing on behalf of the sellers and the buyers, right? You're giving the auctioneer that bid. Is an unconditional bid. So best practice, what us auctioneers do, is that we check with you. Is there a reason why you're pulling back? This is live, right? Or I'm above my limit. I think I was a little bit emotional with that bid. Just wanting to confirm that you have given us an unconditional bid. We will allow you to withdraw it, but we would recommend you not to, especially if it's the final bid.
Sure.
It's happened to us before. So if it's a final bid and someone pulls out just before, it's the seller's discretion to accept it. But at the end of the day, you can't force someone to purchase a property. So what we say is, yes, you're welcome to do that, but I might not take any more bids from you. So are you
So you're
happy?
risking the
Correct. You're risking us, because now you're giving the sellers and myself as the auctioneer a doubt whether you are able to purchase it in the first place. So we then say, if we do withdraw your bid now, I may not take another bid from you. Are you happy for me to do that? Yes, we go to the previously undisputed bidder.
Sure. Brilliant. Now, talking about the emotion and all these things, and the stress what some people go through.
Indeed,
There are auctions which are happening where it's a live auction.
Yes.
Sometimes the auction is on phone call.
Yes.
We have been in quite a few times, so we chose to be on the phone call. Depending on the location, though. So it's a strategy what we implement in that particular thing. For example, there was one which was happening where I chose to be on the ground, and it actually worked really well for us, because people see us as a buyer's agent standing over there, and when we are making an offer confidently, a lot of people sort of think that, oh my god, so we might not be able to bid against a buyer's agent, and so we actually secured the property quite under where we want to secure for the buyers, and they were quite happy with that. But then there are quite a few auctions where we might be on the location, we have taken the clients in the inspection just before the auction, but we chose to sit in the car and do that. We didn't want to show our face right up there.
Understood.
So from an auctioneer point of view,
yes.
I'm pretty sure you would like to see the people who are bidding as well, because you can sort of understand. I guess from a selling agent point of view, you want to understand who is emotionally attached and who might want to pay more for the property and so on. How does it work for you if you have one buyer who is bidding right in front of you and one buyer offline somewhere and talking on the phone?
Sure.
I know you want to get the highest bid as such, but how do you feel like taking that call about, so who is my first preferred bidder and so on?
Yep. What we call that is a proxy, right? So you're bidding on behalf of someone else, and you're referring to someone bidding on behalf of someone else over the phone or being there in person.
It could be a buyer as well who is bidding on the phone as well.
We had a property that we auctioned in Madeley where our eventual buyer came in at the home open or called us in at the home open prior to the auction, and he wanted to register. Now, this is an hour before our auction is starting. We obviously had to run our due diligence to do so, to ensure that we can register him. He managed to provide us with his ID. He managed to show us proof of funds. And he ended up bidding on the phone with my agent partner Ravandi, right? So he was there on the floor while we were negotiating. Short answer is, with us, we don't see it that way. As long as we have registered you and you're wanting to bid from wherever you stand, could be online. There's a great platform called Auctions Live, used a lot in the eastern states. Wonderful operators that run it. That is not very much apparent here in WA, Auctions Live, but you can see the actual bids on a screen, and you can have an online bidder that bids there. Undoubtedly, I guess the point that you're trying to make would be the emotional bidding. My role there is not to manipulate the bids. My role there is to facilitate it. So from wherever that you are bidding from, I'm more than happy to take your bids. What I tell those buyers is that if you can be in the room, it would serve you better, because now you are also reading the room and seeing your competition. If there was a live negotiation to be held, for example, in the case of your investment property, Raj, it would have been very difficult for you to secure the negotiation over the phone. You were there, you were live, you saw the agents, you saw the scenario of the auctions outside. You were in a prime position as a buyer to leverage your negotiation.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And now that you spoke about platform and so on, I wanted to bring in, say for example, a platform like Open Offers.
Sure.
Which is an open offers, open, transparent negotiation on a platform instead of doing a traditional hammer and selling kind of thing. I like Open Offers. Because one, it shows where everyone is standing. I mean, there are other platforms as well. I'm just taking Open Offers as an example. It shows exactly where you are. Sometimes it shows the position where you are, how far you are from the top thing, but it doesn't tell you individual bids, what are there for each and every one of those bidders out there. But it actually allows the buyers to put their conditions in there, including building and pesting. You can add those things in some of these platforms, right? So this is from the seller's point of view. Say for example, someone is $5,000 less than what it is, but they have quite a few conditions why the top one doesn't have any condition or whatever, or vice versa. The top one might have $5,000 more, $10,000 more, but they have plenty of conditions, and second one have no conditions at all. So in a case like that, does the seller still have the option of picking which of those buyers they can go, or is it always the top bidder whom they will be picking?
Great question. So firstly, just in regards to the platform, Open Negotiation was created in response to COVID, when we couldn't have live auctions. So essentially it's the auction system transferred online. The entire process is very similar. You even have a first, second, third call at the end of the open negotiation. Open Offers is exactly what you have just mentioned. It's open negotiation secondary, I would say, I guess, division. That allows people to be putting in conditions into their contract, which is more popular in WA. Ranking system is great. However, as you've rightfully mentioned, you do not see the other person's bids. So you could be bidding 10,000 more, or you could be bidding 50,000 more. If you really like the property, you may not know where you stand in relation to that. Again, the transparency with auctions is clean and clear. Now, with the conditions, the sellers do have the right to pick number 2 or number 3. If they feel that those terms and conditions suit their situation better. Being number one with price doesn't always necessarily mean that you would be the eventual bidder. Again, seller might be subject to sale. They may need to be relocating by a particular date. And if number 1 requires 60 days while number 3 has 14 days, then they would eventually go for number 3. So that's in answer to your question.
Sure, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. So there is a fair bit of questions going on in auctions about auctions and so on. And if you ask me personally, would I like to buy a property for myself or a buyer in an open negotiation? Probably not. I prefer to, I don't mind buying in an auction. Because I can still be confident that I can get some good potentially good deal out of it, because people have to make quick decisions.
Yes.
And not everyone is equipped with all the knowledge and experience to be able to make those quick decisions within that half a minute or less than half a minute sort of thing. I feel I can win over there for the buyers and so on. But if it is open offers, open negotiation, I prefer not to buy property like that, because it still gives quite a few options for the buyers to put multiple terms and conditions.
Yes.
And the price keeps pushing up and up. So unless someone is really emotional about it as a buyer's agent, we go and find something else somewhere, where we can find those things.
Absolutely.
But that's just my preference.
Then I'm a traditional guy, Raj. As you can see, I'm wearing a tie pin that has a little chain down connected to my button. So I prefer the age-old live auctions. I think there's no better way personally to buy property. Again, transparency. What we tell our sellers as well, it is the ultimate test of the market. You find out exactly what somebody is willing to pay unconditionally. You're mitigating risk. Sure. Why add multiple conditions when what you want is to mitigate risk? Our duty as agents is exactly that. For our sellers, is to facilitate the sale with the least amount of risk involved. For buyers, is to ensure clarity and communication.
Very good. Wonderful. Now, look, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to ask about auctions and so on.
Sure.
But just with the experience of what you got in the industry and what you have been there and so on. Now let's talk about property in general, right?
Sure.
So it's interesting times where we're getting into.
Indeed.
Where the demand is still high, people are still wanting to buy properties, but they think that with this budget things are going to change, and obviously there is some borrowing issues with people who are borrowing because of the native getting being taken down and so on. So, but how are you seeing the market? What are your predictions on what the market is going to do?
Sure. Firstly, with regards to the budget, the number one thing is that it hasn't been legislated yet. So a lot of fear is driving the current market changes or the supposed shift that we are seeing in the Perth market at the moment. Obviously, supply is increasing. As of last Sunday, we're sitting at over 5,000 homes that are on the market.
It's interesting you say that, So, yes, supply has increased from what it was before at mid 3,000s or, so 3,200 properties and so on.
1,800 in December.
Yeah. So what people don't understand is, yes, there are 5,000 properties, which is good, which is more than what it was before. But about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, the average listings in Perth used to be 12 to 14,000 single day of the week.
I remember
There's
that,
still
Raj.
a lot of people out there who are not able to find the properties, and we help a lot of our buyers out there.
Yes.
And we are actually having an interesting conversation. So I had a meeting with someone yesterday. We're bringing them on board. So their problem is problem of plenty. Now they are like, look, there are so many properties. I don't know which one is going to give me the real value, what I want out of it in the long run.
Understood.
So so now they're like, oh my God, there's so much more. Am I overpaying for these properties? What should I do? Or is this the right location? Is this the right location? So there is. In fact, the way we see our job is even more important than what it was before, because a lot of the people were just buying properties, whatever they could get to their hand.
Yes.
But when you have plenty out there, you have to pick and choose the right one, because one wrong mistake could actually push you back in your property journey.
Yes,
and that's
indeed.
where the discussions are getting even more intense, as in, like, what about this? I got 3 potential properties, why not this, why not that, so, and how is it going to help us with the things and so on.
That's interesting that you say that, Raj. I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
Let's flip the table real quick now. So now that you mentioned that, because I think that is absolutely key in this market. We say the same thing to our sellers, is that right now more so than ever, more than commission, is about the quality of the agent that you need in order to navigate this market.
Yes.
So from a buyer's point of view, we get questions like this, especially from our sellers who are looking to purchase and sell their own property. Is getting a buyer's agent a good idea in this market? They're increasing properties that are coming up. Why don't I just wait it out and see what happens? I can sell when there are more properties that come on as well. So what we tell them is very simple. Yes, you're going to be in competition when there's more supply. Number 2, if you're looking to purchase, the best thing you can do is to hire a professional. Run us through the journey, right? Say, for example, I have a seller in Ellenbrook looking to purchase around Perth or perhaps outside of WA. What is the process from A to Z in their buying journey when they work with Raj?
Sure. Look, from our point of view, we don't talk about a property. We talk about what this property is going to do for them in the long run. In the short space, what are the gains, what they want to get, and what is this long-term strategy looking like?
Yes.
Especially if this property is, what's the purpose of that? So that's the most important thing. What are they going to live in the property, or is this a property which will be part of their investment portfolio? And if it is an investment portfolio, typically what we do is we have a conversation with them, as in like, where do you want to be in the next 10, 15 years, whatever. So I talk about early retirement a lot, so that's something which I speak every single day.
Very good.
When I talk about early retirement, a lot of people might think, okay, so I'm just sitting there doing nothing. That's not what early retirement is. In my view, early retirement is like, you have a choice of what you want to do. We all have been
The
working.
options.
Yeah, it's all about having a choice in life. So if you
Yes.
don't want
Well
to work in a certain job, you don't want to do that. Or, people might have some passions, which they could not do because of the family pressures or whatever it is. Or they might not enjoy the job anymore. They want to do something different. So imagine a situation, you have to go back to work. You hate the job, you hate the boss, but you're still going back purely because you have bills to pay. You have to pay for the kids' education or their, whatever their expenses are, your partner's requirements or whatever it is. But flip it and say, like, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, I could be in a stage where I could dictate what I want to do in my life. And that's where we want to go, right?
Very
so
good.
we choose, and we've done it for ourselves and a lot of our clients. And so what we have done is, for us to be in that stage, where do we want to be? So we reverse engineer it. Coming from an engineering background, everything has to be working in that number space for us.
Yes.
So, we go back and say, look, for me to be there in by, say, 2037, for example, what should I be doing right now to get there quickly? I get a lot of people coming in and saying, I want to buy 5 properties in the next 10 years. And it's a good aim to have. But, if you're spacing and saying, I'm buying 1 property every 2 years, are you actually planning your journey, or are you just falling into that as a scheduled task kind of thing? Instead, what we talk about is, for you to get to be by 2037, if you want to be here, what if we get you there by 2029? And then
Wonderful.
you sit on it for the next 7-8 years on the property portfolio, what you have. And then you can plan about when you want to get to that financial freedom or, early retirement stage, what you want to talk about. So once we get that understanding, we'll go back and we'll start working on the numbers. If it's an investment, people could be, borderless investment, for example. It doesn't matter where you live, but you're buying in those right areas, which will have that constant growth happening in the short-term space as well.
Indeed.
Like what, I hear from a lot of people, especially people living in Perth, saying, Perth has grown too much, so I want to wait until a downturn happens and then we'll buy it. But the thing is, what you saw in Perth is a super cycle. You won't have the same growth again in our lifetime.
Yes.
That's my prediction anyway, so, but
I think you're spot on.
but then there are plenty of other opportunities out there, good locations which are growing consistently before you even know that, So for example, we have bought properties for our buyers in eastern states. Someone settled on a property on the 23rd of April and it has already gone up by 60,000.
Yes.
We're talking about 28th of May. Right, it's been barely 4 weeks out of it, So the similar properties are selling 60,000 more.
Look at that.
Even after the budget thing came out.
Yep.
So it's all about having that visibility of understanding what these markets are. And investment is like a business. If the risk appetite of someone taking a risk when they're running a business, it matches the requirements. We match it to the right locations and then we go and find in those areas. For some people, they just can't think about buying an older property. For example, they are, I have a buyer who's now a very good friend of mine, but he stresses out a lot. The moment he looks at an older property, he's like, oh, what if something fails over here? And it keeps him awake all through the night. So I keep telling him that, investment is not about forcing yourself into something which you're not comfortable with.
Yes.
So if you're not happy with it, that's fine. We'll go and do something which you are happy with and you can actually sleep at night peacefully. And that's
Very
what
good.
it is. And based on that, we identify the locations. And then once we understand the budget requirements and so on, we map out a strategy and a plan of where we want to go. But
Yes.
in short, if I had to do that, say, for example, if I'm buying a property today, if it's an investment, what I want to see is how does this property help me get to the next property quickly?
Yes.
And what is my next property going to be? So we already have that plan in mind. So we are not waiting for things to happen. We are actually driving that, we're taking control of that whole process of the acquisition part for them to be able to build that portfolio over a period of time. That's
Very
what
good.
we do.
Well, it brings me to my next
Yes, absolutely.
$1 million
Fire them.
question.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of our viewers at this stage are thinking about that right now, especially with the changes and what's been happening or what's about to happen.
Yep.
If you were to invest today, Raj, yourself,
Yep.
where would you be doing so. And I guess this is across Australia,
Sure.
because understandably there's a growing trend of purchasing outside of where you live in.
Yep.
And where would you be doing so, and what would you be looking for?
Sure. Look, again, if I'm talking as a property investor, for example,
Yes.
I am lucky in one sense because I've been investing in property for quite a few years now. So a lot of the properties which we bought many years ago have grown up in value and the rents have gone up. So, so the LVRs are quite low on that. So which means they're already positively geared. I'm not really worried about the negative cash flow because
Excellent.
as much as there is so much noise about negative cash flow, what it is even if you buy the right property in the right markets, within 3 to 4 years, your property will become a positive cash flow property because the rents will continue to grow.
Yes.
And your property, you bought it at that price, and so the repayments will be mostly covered by the rents which you're getting from the tenants. So that's an important factor we look into when we are buying a property as well, right? So we don't want to go and buy a $1.5 million investment property renting for $450, $500 per week. That's not what we want to do. But again, in saying that, there are some people who are buying these ones and they're very strategic in the way what they do that,
Yes.
especially after this budget where if you create the supply, you get negative gearing, which is where, they're talking about brand new houses and so on.
Absolutely.
So I'm working with someone at the moment, say for example, they want to buy a property in and around areas like Bateman, Rosemoyne, Shelley, and these areas where subdividable properties is what they want. They want to buy something at 1.5 to 2.5 million, and if they can subdivide it, and they are seeing the end product of what this property is going to be, which is okay. But until the subdivision happens, until they build the new houses, the rents might be low because they're an old property, which is okay. So
Yes.
and they have
That's
that
planning involved with it.
Exactly.
That's a
And,
future
so-
strategy.
and that is not huge risk for them. That's the
Yes.
thing. Just because they did it, someone else who is, say for example, mom and dad with 2 kids on earning 150,000 each, I don't recommend them doing that. So where I stand about my investments, for example, I'm really looking forward to some subdividable blocks if I
Yes.
can as well.
Very good.
Again, in the right locations. My risk appetite is I might not want to get into certain kind of suburbs because I know where my end product is, and considering my portfolio which I have, and where we are as a family with I, my wife and the kids, we might want to get into certain areas. So I'm not looking for a brand newish kind of property. I'm looking for a worn out property with a good location, good land on it,
Yes.
where I could potentially put in 2-3 properties on that. Either
Excellent.
return and build is an ideal opportunity, but if it's not, if I had to demolish and rebuild 2-3 properties, I'm happy to consider that as well. So
Beautiful.
that's where I'm putting my money in. That's purely
Excellent.
because the yield from other properties are going to cover it up for me.
Very good, Raj. Great answer.
And now let me flip it on you. So
Go for
I know
it.
you are a property investor, and you're very savvy in the way how you invest. So what are your next plans for your property journey?
Sure. So we're looking across Australia at the moment. I think there's 2 parts to this. What I'm looking for at the moment is similar to you, is square meter. I would love a dual income property. That's something that I find to be
We got 3 off-market show
well
occupancies
done,
if you
my
want,
friend.
so
I knew this was coming, Raj.
I know of a very good buyer's agent who is in the room.
As soon as I was invited in, I was given a kombucha. I knew this is going to happen, Raj.
Yeah.
So that's that'll probably be the goal moving forward.
Yep.
Not probably, is the goal moving forward. Me and a few friends, we would love to get together and get into, especially now with the budget announcement, subdivisible blocks. So
Sure.
structure is key.
Yep.
So at the moment, I believe that's something a lot of people are forgetting. Even if you are moms and dads, you can always shift your strategy towards a better structure
Yep.
in how you purchase your property, because that ultimately will still allow you several techniques to get to your final goal. So that's what
Exactly.
I'm looking at. I'm looking at regional areas. I think that's something that still has growth, as you've mentioned.
Yep.
Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland still
Yep.
has a lot of growth in the regional area. You can find properties for 400,000,
Yep.
which is incredible
Yes,
buying across
absolutely.
Australia. So
Like, so just on that note, so we are helping a single mom buy a property for her first investment property. Under 360,000, so we are
Fantastic.
seeing some
Yeah.
brilliant properties for that price range.
yes,
It's all about the risk appetite, we are very clear about what she's going to achieve out of it, and so we had a very clear idea what her immediate future is going to look like in the next 5
Beautiful.
years, and we are finding the right locations for that.
clarity and strategy, Raj. A wise
Exactly.
man once told me.
So yeah, thank you. And one
course.
thing which I wanted to talk about is structure is something which you mentioned, right?
Yes.
So for the viewers, look, I and Prash are not professionally in that space to give you the advice on what structure you should go with. Yes, we know what we are doing, and Prash knows what he's doing in his structure kind of thing. But to get the clarity, I think you should talk to a good accountant who can help you in your structure.
Well said.
If you're unsure, who is a good accountant or not, talk to the right people. I mean, if you reach one of us, we'll probably guide you along to the accountants whom we sort of work with for us and for our clients as well. But make sure you talk to your accountant if you want to get the structure and get a clarity on what works for you. Just because something works for me, something works for Prash, doesn't mean that it works for everyone.
Well said. And just echoing what Raj just mentioned as well, our role here, more than a real estate agent, auctioneer, or a buyer's agent, is to be your advisor. Like, we've dealt with multiple scenarios before, we've had experiences. More importantly, it's the network, I believe, Raj, that you and I have, in separate terms and combined, would be really helpful. Just need to reach out, even if it's for a word or two, or a kombucha with Raj, then you are more than welcome to do so. And that is the recommendation. Find the right people to help you along your journey.
Yeah, it's about having the right team around you to make sure, your goals are... you're progressing towards your goals in the right way, because a lot of people think that buying the property is end of my goal. It's not. Buying the property is only a transition point from where your goal can accelerate faster, or it slows down, or whatever it is. So doing the right stops is an important factor in that.
Absolutely well said, Raj.
Brilliant. And so any last few words about you, about your business to the to the viewers? Well,
for those of you out there, if you want to know more about auctions, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. If you are thinking of selling your property and considering auction method or any other method of that sort, you're welcome to call us. We're here to help. The Real Estate Times Agency, www.therealestatetime.com.au. My name is Prash, and Raj, over to you.
Yeah, and again, my name is Raj, and we run Enrich Property Buyers Agency. We don't talk about a property. We talk about being your strategic partner in your acquisition journey, and we want to help you build that strong portfolio which can help you get to where you want to be in your life. Let it be starting a new business, or you want to have a new passion which you want to do, or maybe if you want to travel the world and not worry about the money and so on, you might want to build that asset base before you start doing all these things. So if you have anything to talk about, any kind of property acquisitions, or if you want to talk about any clarity which you might need, if you want to buy the right location or right kind of property and so on, feel free to reach out, and we'll be more than happy to help.
Here's to your property journey.
Thank you. And that's us signing off from episode 2 of Beyond the Listing.
Thank you.